Welcome back to the table. Ryan and I just played Bonsai from DV Games. This was a Gen Con release, I believe, and we were able to pick up a copy, and we're just now getting it played. And I have to say, it's a tile placement game, but you're drafting cards. You're using those cards for a number of different things. You're ultimately cultivating a bonsai tree, which you grow in your pot, which is probably the coolest thing and the best table presence aspect about it is when you're done, you have potentially a great looking bonsai tree.
Or like my bonsai tree. Which
or a maybe sadder bonsai tree.
If I ever grew a bonsai tree that looked like this, I'd probably just start over.
I like the fact that there's a branch up here that has nothing growing on. It's just like a stick.
Look,
it's like it's dying.
I built my bonsai tree for maximum efficiency of points. I did not make it in any kind of decorative pattern, which is actually something that we'll talk about during this video. But we did just play this. This game is on the lighter side. It's very chill. I mean, like David said, you're just collecting cards. Each card is going to give you resources in the form of tiles, and those tiles are going to be placed out to grow your bonsai tree. I mean, that's basically the flow of the game. It was very easy to learn, and in fact, it was so easy to learn. We actually wanted to talk about that because this is the first time for David and I, actually, that we ever learned a game off of Diced. So we wanted to talk about that a little bit briefly.
Yeah, I happened to see at Gen Con, one of the tables of people that were demoing it and learning it, they had a Diced app set up on a tablet with a speaker, and these people literally learned their demo through that. And I asked them, I was like, how did that go? And they were like, oh, it was pretty good. Yeah. And we'd never used it, so I took a look at the app while they were doing it, and I was pretty impressed. So we used it right here. This is not an app game. It does not require this app. But we literally did not crack the rule book to learn anything. There's a tutorial scenario in there that basically walks you through. It kind of gives each player their first, like, do this your first turn. Now do this your first turn. And then after that, it lets you kind of go. And then it has like a reference throughout basically saying, by the way, if you forget anything, if you have a question about how cards work or how these tiles work or how they need to be placed, there's little buttons on there. It was narrated, although I think the narration sounded like
it was still
AI,
pretty good though.
But it worked. And there was this nice soothing music that went along with it. I have to say, I don't know if I'll use Diced over and over and over, but it was very convenient for learning this really quick.
It was very convenient for learning the game. It took us through setup and teach in about 10 minutes. And also, there's a little in-game button and it says, here's the in-game trigger. When you hit the in-game trigger, press this button. And then it actually was like, now, here's what happens. Finish the round, take one more turn or whatever. And then when you get to final scoring, it actually talks you through every final scoring app, step 2, so you don't miss any final scoring. So that was cool. It's the first time we've ever seen this. And I think Diced is kind of growing. More and more companies are starting to use it to do tutorials. So I don't know if this will ever replace a physical teach, but it was a great experience, and it did let us get right into the game. But like we said, the game itself is pretty simple, so there wasn't a ton that had to be explained. Basically, just what all these cards do, because each card kind of does something different when you take it. A lot of them are going to give you these tiles. Some of them are going to let you place those tiles. Some of them are going to give you in-game scoring points. Some of them are going to come and sit in your tableau and either give you the ability to play more tiles or the ability to hold more tiles. And so there are a lot of different types of cards, and each card is kind of linked to a ability in the space it's in too. So that's kind of the strategy of the game, is when to take those cards.
Yeah, and on your turn, you're just doing one of two things. You're either meditating, which is like what Ryan just said. You're going to take any one of these 4 face-up cards, and when you do, you're not only going to take the action on the card if there is one, in this case, take tiles, this one, play tiles, and this one is a endgame scoring card. And then, like we said, there are a couple other cards that let you place more tiles when you do the other action, or hold more tiles. But when you take one from one of these 3 spaces, you're also going to get those tiles. Now, you can only hold so many tiles, and at the beginning of the game, this tile here shows that you can hold 5. If you get a couple cards that might let you hold more, which is nice because you can do that. And on the other side of it, you can extend it out so that you're able to place more tiles than what's shown here at the top of that tile.
Yeah, that's the cultivate phase, which is the other action you can take. And you basically just look all the way across the top. I took a lot of growth cards because I had a scoring card that wanted me to take them. So I never even got to place all these. But you basically look across, and that's how many tiles you can place, assuming that you've collected those tiles. And there's 1 wild, so you always kind of start with the ability to place 1 wild, 1 wood, and 1 leaf, which you kind of need because every tile does have some rules to where you can place them. Now, this is cool in that, like, it actually shows you with a little bit of graphic on the tile where it can go. So the leaves have just a little bit of wood showing that they have to connect to the wood. And the pink flowers have a little bit of leaf showing that they have to connect to the leaf. And the fruits have leaf on two sides showing that it has to be kind of squeezed in between two leaves. So that's a very cool reminder just of the tile placement rules. And of course, all these tiles score differently as well.
Yeah, this is the standard scoring. So I've got to remind you here that wood is not going to score any points, but every green tile or leaf tile you have in and of itself scores 3 points per leaf tile. And then the flowers or the fruits score. And this is what's interesting. I'm going to start with the easier one. The peach one is worth 7 points, no matter what. Every one you have is worth 7. Yep. So you had 5 times 7, I had 4 times 7. And then the pink flower scores interestingly because you want them to be by themselves. So this pink flower has max points. It's 1 point per side that's not touching another tile.
That's killed me. Look at all those pink flowers you have.
5, 5, 5, and then these ones are a little less. But that's how the scoring goes on the main card. Then there is a few other things. Throughout the game, you can collect these tiles. There's achievements. And there's a few different kinds. Depending on player count, you can use different amounts. But the first time you're able to, say, for instance, place your 5th green tile, you have the option to take this and score those points. Now, you won't be able to take another green tile like this if you go higher. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to shoot for more green, I'm not going to take this, I'm going to wait and get the bigger one. Yeah. You're risking not getting there, right, or maybe someone getting there before you, things like that. So you can get these throughout the game and they're going to be more points. And then there's also the end game scoring cards.
Yeah, and everything just scores at the end of the game. The end of game being when you run out of cards in the deck. So you are going to go through the entire deck of cards. It scales based on player count. So we did remove some cards for a 2-player game. But as soon as that's empty, you take one more turn and then you score. And like David said, your arrangement scores, your achievement scores, and then you're looking at all those parchment cards that you drafted over the course of the game. And each one is going to score for a different element. Points for having the growth cards or the tools or leaves or wood or whatever. So there's a variety of different things that go into scoring. And so you can go heavy. Like I went heavy on the parchment cards. David went heavy on actually like cultivating and building out his bonsai. Also, if there were points for the prettiest bonsai, David would have...
I mean, I wish there were points for the prettiest.
I mean, this thing looks like Godzilla.
I will say, though, it does look like that or a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. There is actually some different bonsai types of trees in the back of the rule book. So there was one that didn't look too different. There was a gnarled one. But yes, this one I feel like, and that's a very pleasant part of the game, which let's talk about
who it's for, because that is a big part. Because first of all, this is a light tile placement game. There's strategy to the tile placement. There is a little bit of a puzzle, but it's not hard. This game is meant to be chill and light. And the real draw to this game is that you're building this bonsai tree. Like that's fun in and of itself. If somebody I think, you would build a really nice bonsai tree if you could.
Exactly. I would never have guessed that a bunch of hex tile placements would end up being perfectly suited to basically build up bonsai trees, but they really are. And like Ryan said, this is very chill. This is going to appeal to more casual gamers who don't really want a lot of like heavy thinking there's nothing cutthroat about this except for, the cards coming out.
Maybe some hate drafting.
A card might come out and you're like, oh, well, I can't let him have that because he's already taken a bunch of master cards. Yeah. And if I let him get this, like I got this, I had 5 of these, which is 10 points for this card. And it happened to come out right for me on my turn. And I will say, that would lead to maybe some of the who this is not for. Yeah. The more experienced gamer is not going to necessarily appreciate some of those things where, a card flipped over and it's perfect for the next person. But unlike games like Calico, for example, or Cascadia, where some of that still happens.
Yeah. It can happen. Less of it.
Those games probably appeal a little bit more to the intense gamer or the enthusiast gamer because there's a lot more to think about and there's a lot more of that tension of like, what am I going to do? A lot of scoring things competing with one another. There's not a lot of scoring things competing with one another.
Yeah, and I will say, this is going to sound weird, but you don't want to like super game this game. Yeah. Because really, the best way to score points is to just place one tile at a time and never flip over a card because you want your opponent to take cards. So if these victory point cards flip over, you get a chance to take them. That's not fun. I don't want to play that way, and I don't
But
want
you
to play
could.
with. But you could.
You could
And I
kind of
think
slow play the cultivating.
if you're like that person that really wants to like maximize your efficient score, like get the most points. This game is not about like build out your tree. I even regret building out this tree. I was like, man, I should have taken some time and like really made it look good.
Yeah, you definitely just went into a I've got a perfect system here for scoring. It looks like more like a top-down farm that you've grown here.
Right, this is not right. I probably would have taken a little bit more time and like thought a little bit less about how you're scoring points, which I know that feels weird to say because I'm definitely not that kind of gamer. I'm like, let me maximize my points however possible. But this game wants you to have a little bit of creativity and a little bit of fun with it.
I will say, I don't know that they plan for future expansions or anything for this, but this game is 100% ripe for an expansion that brings a little more of those things into it.
Yeah, like a little bit more planning and stuff.
It's very chill, it's very simple, but there could be some simple objectives, more objectives like they have, but even other categories, for instance, you're never going to be able to say build a tree that looks like this necessarily, but you could say things like, having 3 separate areas of green,
right,
or 4 separate areas of green, or 8 different things,
several branches,
so that it kind of forces players to build certain types of trees instead of one long limb,
instead of just
a stick in the ground.
Look, I had a little bit of a branch here.
No, it is. It's a beautiful tree.
It's not, but yeah. So that is. I mean, that's going to be up to you, right? This game is going to be played how you want to play. I just think heavier gamers would probably be more at home with Cascadia than this.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of the same out of this sort of game. This is a lighter experience, but like we said from the get-go, that is what this is supposed to be. This is going to be for a more casual gamer, and it's going to be a great game if you're an enthusiast gamer to play with the casual gamers in your life. And
family members, people that like bonsai trees, like my dad, I think would enjoy that idea.
100%. It's a theme that might push some buttons with some certain people so that they would actually play a game with you.
Right.
But anyway, that is Bonsai from DV Games. If you have any questions about it at all, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there, answer whatever we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.